All right, how you guys doing? It's your boy, the Turbo Funkulist. Hope you guys are doing well. If you're a new viewer, thank you so much for showing up. If you're a sub, thank you so much. I love you guys all. Thank you so much for your viewership, like, sub, hype, all that garbage. Let's talk about modding weapon elementals in Warframe. I do think that new mods need to be added to the game. I want to give a big thanks to Firetwice, who has this little instrument you can use. I'll link it in the bottom. It's a website that basically allows you to create your own mods, and I've used it for the thumbnail and for this slide as well to kind of relay what I want done in Warframe, basically, and I just want to thank you a ton for that service. It makes it a lot easier. It's something I try to do with a old modding rework video I made for stuff like the heat resistance mods and cold resistance mods, and now that I have this tool, maybe I'll remake something like that. But yeah, basically the premise of today's video is I would like to see blast, viral, corrosive, and gas mods put into Warframe alongside their magnetic and radiation counterparts. And my reasoning is going to be lengthy, and so again, this is going to be a video where I have my little PowerPoint here, I have my background footage for the low attention span folks, and it's just going to be the usual. You can put me down. This is kind of an audio only experience, but thank you so much for your viewership. Love you guys so much. Thank you for the opportunity to make videos for you. Let's begin. So some big points for the video. Basically the premises that I'm trying to express here. Elemental modding is kind of boring right now because of the way 6060s usually work. If you're not familiar with what a 6060 is, basically it is a mod that is 60% of one of the primary elements, so toxin, electric, heat, and cold, and 60% status chance. Basically all it is, there's one for melee, one for pistols, and one for primaries, or one for secondaries, I guess I should say. A lot of the times the 6060s are taken over the simple 90s because ultimately, like, when you kind of run the numbers, like even like a basic sniff check, right, you're choosing between a 6060 and a 90% variant, and most of these elements don't have primed variants. So like, for example, primed heated charge is one of the big reasons why modding pistols actually comes out to be a fairly simple process, because heat is a element that you want weighted very highly when you combine it with, corrosive or viral. And so primed heated charge is actually super easy to put on, but when you're doing it with a primary, it can feel super awkward, same with melee. And there is just, that kind of leads to a pretty big lack in modding support, and the modding experience becomes a little bit dry that way. So obviously, like, as a side grade of suggestions, I do think that we need to, like, maybe accelerate the trickle in of new modding options in terms of primed mods, to help out with some of the weighting stuff and to make it a more interesting process, because right now there is really no point in choosing a 6060 instead of a 90, unless you are doing, or then there's no point in choosing a 90 instead of a 6060 unless you're doing like heat inherit or very specific mechanics, or your weighting is disproportionately important, which again just doesn't happen very often. Blast, gas, and corrosive, and viral as well, are incredibly impactful modded elements. Right, so like, if you've ever, guys, I don't know how many sniper players there are in this channel, but I use snipers a lot. I use the Vectis and the Paragale very often, and if you've used those kinds of weapons, you know that blast is able to make them incredibly strong, and basically remove their main weakness. Right, running a sniper without some sort of gimmick like Kalerva's Collective Curse is a very miserable experience if you don't put blast on it. It's basically, I would say it's borderline required. Single target damage is not something you want in Warframe. You just don't need it. There's a few instances where it's useful, but if you could ever turn it into multi-target damage, you would take that opportunity instantly, and that's what blast and gas both do. Corrosive makes it so the weapons with high fire rate and like even moderate status chance are able to actually deal with those armored enemies. Armor is one of the biggest sources of DR in the game, both for the player and for enemies. It's the main source of DR in the game for enemies, right? Besides when like attenuation was a thing. And so a lot of weapons that are on the weaker end struggle a ton against armor if you can't get that armor off with either abilities or, again, corrosive procs. And then viral is a little bit uninspired, and this is kind of where the idea for this video came from, is that ultimately all you're doing is putting on two 6060s of cold and toxin to get viral, and then all viral does is do more damage. And I know that's a bad thing, but I think it's very uninteresting for the sake of like modding your weapon. You're like, again, viral, the status effect, just do more damage, is a very uninteresting aspect, and for that to take up 2 of your mod slots, I think it's pretty lame. So having that take up 1 mod slot and adding like a different stat, like for example in this case I put like punch through, you could do fire rate, you could do reload speed, I'll talk about that in a second, but it feels like you shouldn't be so limited in that way, right? Another big thing is that this basically allows you to create more mod space, not just for your elements and like what you're trying to do, right? Again, having to make it so that you can get blast onto your sniper rifle without having to use 2 mods could be really, really interesting, right? And it frees up another slot. So there's weapons that not only want more elements and stuff getting onto their weapons, but there's also weapons that are struggling to excel due to other mod limitations. So right now, modding, like putting on, there are mods that just increase your reload speed. That's like their main thing they do. They increase your reload speed. Some increase their fire rate. What's another niche one? I guess like punch through is kind of, prime shred's pretty good, but like punch through can be a hard mod or a hard stat to get on. But yeah, mainly like reload speed is like one of the biggest ones for me, right? And so in those cases, you will usually end up using a frame like Gauss or a frame like Hero when you just try to speed it up. Makes perfect sense. But if you've ever like watched a modding video, and again, if you're like a true free thinker and like you've equipped a reload speed mod, then like more power to you. But most Warframe players are very like mentally on damage. I need the build that does the most damage, and that's fair. You don't want to sacrifice damage. But in this case, if we were able to kind of compress some of the strength that these combined elements provide, so again, corrosive, blast, gas, viral, then we would be able to ideally create a mod slot where we could either add more fun niche mods. For example, I think Bladed Rounds is a very good damage mod that just doesn't fit into most builds most of the time. You'd be able to fit, again, your reload speed, your increased fire rate, like more fun mods. This is like, I'm not sure if this is a hot take or not, but I really do genuinely believe that modding weapons in Warframe is actually quite a boring process. I think the Acuity system, the Acuity set of mods, was one of the best sets they've ever added to the game. I think it's a genius idea. Do I think that multi-shot is generally better in most cases? Yes, but when Acuity is strong, and when the player can use Acuity and land headshots, Acuity is genuinely nutty and insanely high dopamine and fun to use. Fun is the key, which is something I'll be talking about in a second, right? So I think that more options need to be presented to the player in terms of like modding things that aren't just the check boxes of my crit chance, my crit damage, my synergistic statuses, base damage, arcane. Like this is how every weapon in Warframe feels like it is built the same way. And I think that adding very simple mods would fix this process like overnight, super quickly. But also, again, the key here is that this would bring up like older weapons, weaker weapons. There are weapons, again, snipers are the main one that I introduced, where if you can get gas or blast on a sniper, like you're able to make it so much better. But again, right now that currently takes 2 mod slots, which is super annoying. If you look at an example like the AX52 and the Vesper 77, right? Those 2 weapons have augments, right? Leaded gas and biotic rounds. Those 2 augments make those weapons so much disgustingly better. To the point where like they're actually worth using in a lot of cases, especially biotic rounds. Actually a crazy augment. The goal is not really to make these mods, again, these mods being the dual status mods that I'm talking about here. The goal isn't really to make them straight upgrades, but the aim would be to make them side grades to 60/60s, right? So they would probably offer either less or like no status chance. In the case of like 60/60s, having 2 60/60s gives you 120% status chance, which is super good. Here, the goal would be to give maybe less status chance, or have it so you could combine like a blast with a cold, for example, it gets some status chance, but also in this case, get some status damage. Again, like don't stress the numbers too much in this case. Just like think about the concept. Don't lose yourself in the numbers in this, because this is just I don't work for DE. Yeah, I'm just throwing a video together. But like a couple things like punch through, which is a stat that's can be really hard to get onto properly. Fire rate, reload speed, follow through on melees, like combo count chance, status damage, headshot multiplier, movement speed, like all sorts of things that I think could potentially be added in order to make more compelling mods. Again, I just think that the ability to free up a mod slot through not having to use 2 mods for viral, 2 mods for blast, 2 mods for gas, 2 mods for corrosive every single time would free up a bunch of space for the player. And I think it's always a good thing, because again, I think modding weapons is just a really boring process, and freeing up some room to be a little bit more expressive I think would be just a generally like net very good thing. So yeah, just to bullet point before I go on to kind of like my main, I just wanted to like talk about the benefits in a very like strict numerical format. So one, again, you get more modding variety if you add these. New mods will just allow players to experiment more, combine options. When no primed variant exists, again, your weighting can get messed up with heat viral, pretty annoying. So adding more prime mods would be a good choice, but also adding these mods would be a great choice. Again, 2, weaker weapons are uplifted. So weapons that just kind of have like some sort of lack, right? So like maybe it's like a high fire rate, high multi-shot, quick reload, snappy weapon that just like needs to be able to strip armor off quickly, right? You could have corrosive on there pretty easily. Sniper rifles give blasting gas, all sorts of like, just again, easier access to the things that make weapons stronger. And then of course, freeing up room for already existing solid mods. Again, bladed rounds is kind of my example, but again, just the ability to slap on more fire rate, slap on more, I don't know, random multi-shot. I guess multi-shot, that's another hot take I have. I think multi-shot is an incredibly boring stat. There are weapons that have cool interactions with multi-shot, but I don't think multi-shot itself is very interesting. But yeah, basically the ability to free up more things like headshot multipliers. Again, I do think that like as a broader concept, I know it's kind of outside the scope of this video, but I do think that more mods should just be added for fun in random places. You know, weird headshot multiplier, there's weird niche mods, again, like the acuity set. I understand that when you're adding mods into the sandbox, you do need to be very careful. You know, I understand it totally, but just like, right now, it feels like you kind of are, every time I walk up to the crafting bench, or to the arsenal, the metaphorical crafting bench, I'm just like, I have the same tools, like, every time. When I use a niche mod, I'm very excited. Like, I used, like, Target Acquired today in one of my builds I'm working on, and I got very, very excited. So, I used Sharpshooter, I was super excited about that. There's just, like, again, I want more room kind of freed up for the compelling mods here, or for the less, again, the mods that we're not using every single day, right? So let's have a quick little chat. What are kind of the main oppositions to the existence of these mods? There are 3 that I could come up with. If you have more, again, if you have stuff for the case for these mods or against these mods, again, please provide them in the comments. This is always an invitation for discussion. But the 3 that I have are concerns about power creep, which power creep LMAO, it's the big 26, buddy. Let's figure our lives out. Concerns about abandoning 6060s. This is kind of like the main thing where I do say to not focus on the numbers, but like you'd have to playtest some numbers, figure out some numbers, in order to make this as close to a side grade as you can. The goal is to make it so that there's going to be cases where like the new mods, again, these viral corrosive or blast mods, will be like generally better on some types of weapons, while 6060s that have the status and like just regular primed mods will be better on others. Again, kind of including more elemental primed mods is a huge part of the solution as well, but obviously it's not a very compelling video topic, right? And then some concerns about modding complexity, and in this case I think that modding complexity would kind of remain the same, but we'll go into that in a second. So I have MS Paint. Here we go. So the concerns about power creep are actually, I think, somewhat valid. And I'm going to kind of explain what's going on. So let's assume that this orange line here that I'm going to draw, this is like level 500. This is like the damage necessary to, I guess, here in a sec. I have my OBS in the reminder. Okay, there we go. 500. Right, so 500 is like level for EDA, ETA. Let's say that like this is the level that you need to comfortably, without much brain power, with a decent build, not a ton of buffs, kill a level 500 ETA enemy. And say on the bottom rung here we have like S tier weapons, A tier weapons, B tier weapons, and like C tier weapons, right? Even like D tier weapons. Okay. S tier weapons obviously like just giga surpass this, right? I mean, our Torrids, our Latrons, our dual Toxicist, these weapons just instantly smoke out like anything that gets on the screen, right? Let alone without buffs. With buffs, it's absolutely like ridiculous. A tier weapons usually hit like right here, I would say. Again, they also pretty easily clear this. They might need a little bit more buffing, a little bit more going on, but they can get stuff done like generally pretty easily, especially with a little bit of support. B tier weapons usually end up like right there, like they're able to do it, especially with buffs. They're generally able to clear it, but they'll have a harder time. C tier weapons and D tier weapons are worse, and there's fewer and fewer of these in the game, thank goodness, because of Incarnans, because of DE being pretty diligent, augments, all that stuff. Like again, we are phasing out the bad weapons. We're doing like a generally good job of that. I feel like Warframe has been as versatile as it ever has been, and is going to continue to become more versatile, because again, I do believe DE's goal is to make as many weapons viable as possible, to give the player as much opportunity as possible. And so I think that these mods will be something that allows that to happen. So like when these mods get added, we can kind of predict that, like, you can't even see it on my screen, but like this bar is going to go up into the goddamn stratosphere, right? Getting an extra mod on like a Torrid is insane. If you're able to get like some extra mod room to move the blast around, obviously, like, again, I can't say for sure. I don't know about Torrid modding. I just know there's some weird scaling stuff going on, but like the S tier options become like insanely better. The A tier weapons gain a bunch of ability, they gain a bunch of modding freedom, and they're able to kill the enemies more efficiently. But notice that, like, also, again, I understand that the S tier broken weapons are power creeping, right? But the other weapons are also gaining stats, are also gaining the opportunity to use new tools, right? And so now, like, that we have more tools available, I would say more weapons are able to kind of compete at this level, and you're going to be less upset about rolling them in EDA ETA, which I hear is getting some good changes. I am so disgustingly excited. I love Pablo Alonso. I love DE Pablo so much. I hope he loves me too. Okay. Anyway, the argument against power creep is basically that, like, yes, power creep. I agree. 100% I agree. But I don't care. I don't care, right? The point here is that more weapons would become viable with opportunities like single mod viral, single mod blast. More weapons will become stronger, and that's what ultimately I feel like we should want. So power creep kind of knocked that one out. I don't think that it's a very compelling argument. Power creep, maybe 5 years ago, 4 years ago, this was a real argument, but it's been pretty obvious, made pretty obvious that DE doesn't really care about power creep. And in turn, I also don't care about power creep. I kind of trust their vision for the game in that way. Do I want Warframe to be more difficult? Yeah, but it's become obvious to me that that's not how, it's not gonna be done through numbers, right? They're gonna have to add compelling mechanics, and I'm okay with that because the power creep is fun to me now. I've kind of embraced it. I love making builds. That's just my bias as a player whose end game has a lot of assets and a lot of knowledge. 4,600 hours worth of knowledge. To throw builds together and have fun. So again, on to the next one. Concerns about abandoning 6060s. This one's the most valid here. That's because if we were to add mods like this, again, 6060s would have their place for sure, especially in heavy status builds, because you would want the status chance. It would just kind of depend on what stats you decided to throw alongside these mods, right? So my thought would be like the blast one would have like punch through, because that, you're trying to make a single target weapon do things, like giving it punch through and blast feels like a great way to do that. Having the viral one give like reload speed, gas one give status damage. Like, I have all sorts of ideas. You can kind of feel free to type yours in the comments. But I could see a case where these very quickly could become better than most 6060s, and then 6060s become kind of abandoned, depending on the numbers that are given to these mods. Again, these were just kind of made as a cosmetic thing to show you guys, but yeah, obviously would have to be implemented pretty carefully. But I do think that just because things might be hard to do and might require some like soft gloves, it doesn't mean they shouldn't be out in the first place. And then concerns about modding complexity, right? Oh, we're adding more mods, we're making modding more complex. Like, first of all, I'm willing to bet, and you can throw me off the edge of a cliff if I'm wrong, I'm sure like 60% of Warframe players just YouTube their builds, if not more, and that's okay. That gives me a little side gig I get to do, and I love this. I love making Warframe videos more than I love most things in my life, but most people do just look up their builds, so modding complexity can kind of blow me. But modding complexity would either remain the same or become easier, right? If these dual element mods come in with, but before most players get their hands on 6060s, which 6060s are not very streamlined. They're acquired through like spy missions, I think. And I think Barrow and like a couple other niche things. Like, if these mods come in somehow before those, like, this is way easier to mod with. You're able to get blast without having to order, like, I don't know, oh, I put my heat mod in the wrong spot. Whoops, now I have radiation and I'm useless. And I think that could be something that's really good, right? So that's about it. I wanted to keep this one short. I did run my mouth like really hard, but I hope you guys enjoyed. This is something I'm pretty passionate about, and if you have any thoughts, you should 100% drop them. Love you guys a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any video ideas, feel free to drop them. Again, this is your channel. I kind of just make the videos, so feel free to drop any suggestions, and thank you guys so much for the support recently. I love you lots, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.